Hey, Dr. Hood followers. I'm sitting here watching my son practice Little League football. So this is why I'm dressed like this. But I wanted to talk to you guys about a clinical research topic, the informed consent process. So I have a question. If you, as a CRA, go to a site and you suspect that the signatures on the informed consent are very similar to a specific staff member or several staff members at the site, how should you handle it? Should you A, confront the PI and tell them about your concern? Should you B, just collect as many informed consents, dates, and signatures? Of course, not of the patients, because that'll be considered personal health information, but of the person conducting the informed consent process, and the version of the informed consent, because you want to make sure you specify which a version that you feel may or may not have some fraudulent information. Or should you immediately report to the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, without discussing it with the PI or somebody at your CRO or at the sponsor that you work for? So those are your three options. How do you think you should handle it? So let's go over option 1, confronting a PI. You should never confront a PI directly or site staff member if you feel that some fraudulent behavior has taken place. Because A, you want to gather the evidence. B, you want to escalate that to your clinical trial manager or your clinical trial operating leader or your line manager to see what are the SOPs, the standard operating practices of your organization. Also, you got to consider there is a safety issue. People get very defensive once you potentially jeopardize their license or their freedom. You got to understand, falsifying study participants in exchange for getting paid is fraud. So you want to remain safe as possible. You also don't want to discuss while you're at the site in a area that a site staff member can hear you. So keep in mind, when we go into these monitoring rooms or these hallways or these closets, sometimes the walls are thin and they can hear what you are saying. I had a site that I had to monitor in their supply room, and I could hear what went on in their office right next door. So you just got to be real careful. Again, it's a safety issue. For option B, about whether or not you should gather your information. That is what you want to do. So you want to list as many ICFs, informed consent forms, that as many as possible that you expect fraudulent behavior on. You want to do the version, the date that it was signed, and the staff member who completed the informed consent process. And you also might want to know, based on that delegation law, whose signature you think it closely represents or closely might be associated with. Again, gathering this information, gather it in a way that you're not showing it to the site staff. And then lastly, do you report it to the IRB? Again, no. That's not something that you need to report at this moment. You need to first have a discussion with your leaders before you do this, because A, they might want to complete an audit. They might want to send your code, your clinical trial manager to that site so they can review the ISFs themselves. You don't want to initiate something without having permission to do so. So remember, documentation, safety first.